All right, hello, everybody. So great to see you here today. All right. Growing up, I was a huge Apple fan. I loved exploring the internet, using any type of tech I could. I was particularly talented at using video editing software, Adobe Photoshop, even playing with CSS and HTML to make my MySpace backgrounds as pretty as possible. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about, right? But funnily enough, working in tech never occurred to me. And the reason why was because growing up, I really wasn't that good at math. And I was under the impression that if you were going to be working in tech, you had to be like an incredible mathematician, right? So instead, I decided that I was going to become a comedian. Very logically, of course. I was creative. I loved making people laugh. And I also was a filmmaker. And I figured, man, this is, my ticket to Hollywood. If I can just get through this, I can make it work, right? I knew that it was risky. Everyone who I talked to about it told me that, it's going to be difficult. Money is going to be scarce. Like, you're never going to make it. Well, I didn't mind a challenge. I didn't mind a risk. And I knew that I was the type of person where if a challenge were to come up like that I could make it. And I might be smart enough to take on those same risks. But there were 3 things that the people in my life didn't tell me that maybe would have changed my trajectory earlier. The first is having extremely advanced math skills is not a requirement for most jobs, even jobs in tech. Second, very few people, if any in my life, actually encouraged me to get into tech. I remember the first job that anybody told me that I should have was to work in advertising because it's the safe, creative job, right? And third, Steve Jobs, the guy who I thought was the coolest guy on the planet, wasn't a math or a tech whiz. And most entrepreneurs aren't. This guy was just a kind of a crazy hippie who was obsessed with design and, was a bit of an asshole. So today, I'm going to tell a little bit about me and my journey. But more than that, I want to talk about why creatives are going to be the tech giants of the future and what we can do with businesses and organizations to make that happen. Now, before we dive in, I do need to do a little bit of housekeeping. I do need to admit a few things. First things first, I didn't finish the script until this morning. All right, I've been workshopping this for about 3 weeks, and I still wasn't happy with it until about 9 a.m. Okay, so I am not off book, clearly, since I got this guy with me here today. But we're gonna just make it work, and it's gonna be a blast. And although I'm not fully memorized, as this is 13 pages long, that we're gonna just plow right through, I promise it's not as long as you think it is. I am still very, very rehearsed. So, in addition to that, I didn't really finish my slides in time. So I have some slides here, which we're going to take a look at, that I primarily submitted at the last possible second last night, much to Beatrice's annoyance. I apologize, Beatrice, for causing you so many troubles when it comes to this talk today. But I do have some poster board right here. So, and finally, if you're wondering, man, did I pick the right talk to go to this morning? I'm here to reassure you that I am also unsure if you've made the right decision. So I know this is the Twin Cities main stage, so you would think that I'm like a really experienced speaker, and in some ways I am because I was a comedian in New York for 6 years. But also I have never spoken at a conference before, right? So just very different. And and the thing is, I applied for this speaking gig primarily because I love TED Talks and I love sharing ideas and I love learning about new perspectives and kind of having my mind blown. But when I was talking to my friends about this talk here in the startup community about what this was all going to be about, they kept saying, "Hey, Carolyn, we're so excited for your stand-up set on startups and tech," right? I was like, "What, guys? Like, I'm not here to make you laugh. I'm trying to have this be an actual conversation that you're going to be interested and invested in." So, turning pages is very difficult here. So, and even on top of that, my buddy Chris, who's sitting right over there. Chris, can you wave to everybody? I'm going to call you out a few times, so I apologize, Chris. You're going to have to love this. So my buddy Chris even asked me whether there was going to be an interactive improv session halfway through with the audience. Like we're hanging out in some second-rate comedy theater that doesn't even have safe fire exits, right? He even said this about what we were going to talk about today. All right, I hope this is going to work. Can you tell me what you're expecting next week from my talk?
Yeah.
So that the audience understands what their expectations should be?
Really high expectations. I want to be put through the full range of emotions. I want to laugh, cry, be inspired, be let down, then be inspired again. I expect that I'm going to go and learn new tricks and how to juggle. I want to know how to juggle after
that
this.
Makes sense, yeah.
I want to be able to balance on a ball. I want to be able to do double backflips and then also figure out how I can be more creative to help me grow my business. Low expectations.
Yeah, very low, yeah.
Cash expectations.
Not a big deal at all. Thank you, Chris, for setting the bar. I'm very excited to go above and beyond. So now I'm going to share a little bit about me, and then we're going to get right through this, okay? So, hi, my name is Carolyn Holden, and I like to describe myself as a creative entrepreneur. Why? Well, because I've had a bit of a goofy career, okay? I graduated from St. Olaf College with a film major and moved to New York and worked in advertising for a hot second before becoming a comedian for 6 years. That said, unfortunately, like all of us, one day I did turn 26 years old, and I did have to go get health insurance. So I did what anybody would do, and I got a random odd job at a venture capital firm. And it completely changed my life. Now, this VC is called Loeb NYC in New York. And what was unique about it was they had a co-working space with 20+ startups there, but they also had something called shared services. So they had marketers, accountants, business strategists, and engineers all there to help the startups in the office. Then, as the pandemic hit, I actually joined one of their portfolio companies, Mercado, where I helped grow the company 10,000% year over year when the pandemic hit. I was their very first COVID hire because they knew me from the office. And we ended up being the only grocery delivery app that you could order from in New York for the first few months of the pandemic because every other platform was so backed up with orders. So it was an absolutely wild time. So I was there for 2 years, and after a few months, I pivoted over to Buncha, a local grocery delivery app that some of you guys may have heard of. And as of literally today, I am now a full-time founder of my startup, Home Surfing, which is very exciting. Thanks, guys. I gotta turn the page again, hang on. This is really an adventure. How are you guys doing today? All right, so working in startups, venture capital, and tech ended up being a complete game changer for me, and I absolutely love it. However, the fact that I got in to startups and venture capital at all was really random. I got in through comedy, not through any training programs, not through anything that you might expect, right? And on top of that, after leaving Loeb and after leaving Mercado, I had challenges finding my next role. Because although I had a lot of interesting experiences and could do a lot of different things, I was still considered to be too different. I was routinely passed over for people who had very traditional backgrounds, despite the fact that I had a lot to offer in a lot of different ways. So this isn't just my experience, and this is why I'm here to talk about it today. Because I have many friends in the arts, and I've talked to many more who have experienced the same thing, where switching careers, is hard enough, but switching into tech seems to be particularly challenging. So, meanwhile, the tech industry has 2 staffing problems. I thought that would be a little faster. Here we go. We got 2 main staffing problems when it comes to tech, right? First, we don't have enough people, right? When it comes to some of these hardcore roles like engineers and product managers and things like that. HR professionals have a really challenging time trying to fill these roles. But at the same time, HR professionals are typically looking for a very specific type of person. Somebody who fits a very specific box, right? Meanwhile, ATS technologies make the situation even worse, okay? I actually had a situation where I saw a product manager role at a really big Fortune 500 company here in the Twin Cities. Now, I'm not gonna name them because that would be rude, that would be unprofessional, so don't ask me about it afterwards. I am not telling you, cool? So I saw this product manager role. And the thing is, I haven't worked as a product manager before, but in my time at Mercado in particular, I was working directly with the product managing team on a daily basis and working on building a ton of different types of products. And everybody there said, gee, Carolyn, your background in fine art, your background in film, and your background in tech would make you a really good candidate for being a product manager. So I saw this Fortune 500 position open, and I decided, what the heck, I'll just throw in a resume. Like, what's the worst thing that could happen? They say no. Well, I submitted my application, hit submit, and on the left-hand side was the normal, hello, thank you for submitting your application, we'll get back to you soon. But on the right-hand side of the screen was probably a little glitch. On the right-hand side of the screen, a little pop-up came up saying, you are no longer being considered for the role. It had been less than 2 seconds, and I was already out of the running and knew about it. And the thing is, product managers and filmmakers, a specialty that I have had, I've been filmmaking for over 20 years, right? Filmmaking and product managers, I believe, are frankly cousins. The process of making a film is extremely similar to the process of building a product. You have to be a good communicator. You have to understand difficult technical challenges. You have to understand user experience. You have to understand, what is going to make this easier, and how do we also make it pretty, right? And how do we get users to respond to it, watch it, and how are they going to react? And you would think that that experience would be relevant, right? But ATS softwares only use keywords. And apparently, my resume didn't have the right ones. So alas, this wasn't a best buy situation, but it was a bye-bye situation. So, and another hiring manager missed out on another potential opportunity. Now, we can continue to workshop resumes to make sure they're ATS perfect. I've done it. I actually coach people on how to do it sometimes. I have rebranded my LinkedIn more times than I can count. And yet, I'm still sitting here thinking, why do we have to do that when the experiences that I had in the arts are just as relevant as my experiences in tech. We need to rethink this whole process, right? We want people who are enthusiastic about tech, who are enthusiastic about being creative, who are able to take on these types of things. And if our ATS softwares and hiring managers who aren't, thinking about the bigger picture, aren't treating our keywords the same way they would a software engineer, that's a problem. So let's do it. Let's talk about creatives, and let's talk about what creatives bring to the table. Because I think the more that we talk about this, the more likely we are going to be able to change the situation. Chris, you look so alarmed. So what makes me qualified to talk about creatives and people in the arts? Aren't you just a comedian? Aren't you just a filmmaker, Carolyn? Well, no, that's not actually the case. I was always an incredibly creative person working in a lot of different areas. I was someone who obviously was in film, obviously was in comedy, but I was actually almost a fine arts major in college until I got in a fight with a digital art professor, and he ended up getting fired 3 days later. So, the only thing I don't have any experience in is music. And that's not for a lack of trying. I went to St. Olaf College. They have many competitive choirs, if you've heard of them. I auditioned for every single one, every single year. And alas, never made it through. So let us talk about the first main skill that creatives have, which is being phenomenal idea generators. All right? Artists and creatives are phenomenal at coming up with ideas in every single discipline, right? A lot of this has to do with the way they're trained. It's more than just, oh, they're really creative and they just come up with ideas naturally. No, artists, especially at the higher level, are trained in how to come up with ideas regularly over time and how to build them, right? So in fine arts, it's looking at other pieces of art for inspiration. In theater, watching pieces. In film, watching pieces, right? But one of my favorite ways to come up with ideas is working with comedians, all right? If you've ever watched any scripted comedic show, which I'm sure you have, somewhere out there in the world is a writer's room filled with writers who are pitching every single joke under the sun, whether they're good, whether they're bad, whether they are so ludicrous that nobody would ever be interested in, right? And the reason they do it is because if you don't throw the bad ideas out there, you're never going to find the best ideas. Now, what I want to do now is play a little game, and you guys are going to be participating. And the game is called A to C, all right? And how it works is somebody in the audience is going to give us a suggestion, a word, an A, perhaps. It is almost definitely going to be pineapple, since pineapple is the most over-suggested word in all of improv comedy. And so the next person will have to think of B, whatever's the first thing that they think of when they see A. And then they have to say the word C, whatever the next idea that comes in, right? So say we have Chris up here, my friend, says pineapple, okay? Now, say I'm next, and I think, okay, what's the first thing that reminds me of pineapple? Okay, that's apple. Brilliant. Okay, so I'm not going to say that aloud, I'm going to think it. And then we are going to try to think of what's the next thing, C, which in this case is obviously Johnny Appleseed. So what I would love to do now is have 3 people come to the stage. Chris, this is your fault, so you have to get up here. Come on. And I could use 2 to 3 more people. This is going to be really quick, I promise, guys. Oh, him? Yeah? Yeah, come on, come on, come on, come on. This is gonna be fun. All right. Come on, can I get one more? Yeah, come on over. Hey, listen, I love that strategy. I love that strategy. All right, so if you guys want to gather, like right here is where the camera's gonna be able to see you. Come on over. All right, so now we need a suggestion of an audience for our first A, and then what's gonna happen is you're gonna think your B, you're gonna say C, that's your A. Got it? Then you're gonna say your C, and then that is gonna be your A, and you're gonna think your B, and you're gonna say your C. Okay. You ready? No. Okay. And so we're just gonna go through this 2 times. And the faster you do it, the faster it's over. So, all right, now I need a lot of you guys over here to pitch a word, a suggestion, and it cannot be pineapple. I would love it if all of you were to shout a word, and I will try to pick whatever is the best or most interesting one, okay? So you guys ready? Think of something. 3, 2, 1. Start yelling over and over again. All right, river. So your word is river. Think, and what's your next word? Beautiful. So think about what Mississippi reminds you of, and then what's the next thing? State. Beautiful, okay. So think what state reminds you of, and then what's the next word that comes to mind? Government. Government, okay, so government is your word. Think government. Leader, beautiful. Okay, what's the next one? President, okay. And? Election, beautiful. Okay, thank you guys so much for participating. Feel free to go back, you did it. But can you see how hard that is, guys? Can we give them a round of applause? The thing is, it seems really simple, right? Say, hear A, think B, and then do C. But it really takes a lot of practice to get to do it really quickly. And comedians play games like these to train themselves to come up with ideas faster, to think, what is the next thing that could possibly happen? And when you're hanging out with comedians, the more different A and C are, the better, right? Now, the next thing that creatives are particularly good at is iterating and experimenting. Now, this is pretty obvious. If you've ever seen a painter and how they have, 10 of the same artworks, if you ever watch film editors continue to improve their craft, if you ever have seen, musicians who continue to refine their music over time, they practice and they practice and they practice. But one of the, it kind of doesn't matter how many times they do it. They do it to continue to improve their work. They continue to improve their skill. They do it to continue to come up with new ideas. And, sometimes it can be annoying. Now, one of my favorite, one of the more interesting variations that I have seen in this through hanging out in theater, through hanging out in film, through hanging out in the arts in general. In theater, there is a school of thought. There's actually a theater school in New York that teaches the Meisner method. Has anybody ever heard of it? I see you nodding. Anybody else? Okay, cool. Who has heard of method acting? Okay, I got more nods here. Okay, so method acting was invented by this guy named Stanislavski, right? He was a Soviet. And he ended up having 3 students in the US. It was Lee Strasberg, Stella Adler, and Stanford Meisner, apologies. Now, all of them went in different directions as they continued to spread method acting. Method acting, for those of you who don't know, is simply a style of acting where you try to embody as much of your character as possible. People who are really into like Strasberg method acting, guys like Heath Ledger or Jared Leto will like pretend to be the characters for months at a time. They're really scary because they're really good at their craft, but they're also scary when they get cast in roles like murderers and things like that. They're not really fun to hang out with anymore after that. So, but when it comes to Meisner, their whole thing is 2 people will be given two people will be given one line that they get to work with, right? So in this case, maybe Chris's would be like, Carolyn, I was right and you were wrong. And I would say, why, yes, you were right and I was wrong. And we would go back and forth over and over and over again and try to say the words in as many different ways as possible in order to get closer to the character, but also to see all of the different possible ways that you could play that role, right? So if Chris were to participate, do you want to? Do you not? Come up here, and get down here quick. So what we would do is basically, this part of an acting exercise would be going back and forth and saying those same lines over and over again as differently as possible every time. Okay, so we're gonna we're gonna go back and forth like this. All right, so your line is, Carolyn, you were wrong, I was right all along, and I say, Chris, and we'll go back.
This is like a natural line, though.
Yeah.
I say this a lot, too. Yeah. Carolyn, I was right.
Yeah. Chris, I know you're right, I'm so sorry. So now say it again, but in a different way.
Carolyn, I was right.
Chris, I know you're right, and I'm sorry.
Carolyn, I was right.
Chris, you were right. And I'm so sorry. All right, last one.
Carolyn, I was right.
Chris, I'm so sorry. All right, can we give a round of applause for Chris? Thank you, Chris. I'm going to bother you one more time if you want to be close to an exit. All right, so the next thing that artists are particularly good at is giving and receiving constructive criticism. All right, now in the arts, in basically every discipline, the way that artists improve their skills and get better is by meeting with other artists and having critiques. All right, so if you are an actor, you'll perform a scene maybe with a few other people or just by yourself, and everybody will give you feedback. Or if you are an artist, everybody has their pieces on the wall and people say, oh, I really like this about this. But the whole point is not to be cruel, but you can't say nothing. Every person has to participate, maybe not in every single piece, but as much as possible. And the goal is to help people think about their pieces of art differently. All right, now for this, I really wanted to have another funny thing that I did, right? And I really specifically wanted it to focus on Chris because I was already bugging him with everything else in here. And I thought it would be hilarious to try to do something that invoked fine art. And I thought, man, wouldn't it be funny if I made a portrait of my friend Chris and had the audience critique it? So I was up until midnight last night making this portrait of Chris. And then woke up this morning and said, holy crap, this is the worst idea I've ever come up with. I can't do this. But at the same time, I also did not want this portrait of Chris in my house. So we're not going to criticize this portrait. But Chris, you do have to take it. I can't keep this. So Chris, here's your work of art. Everyone, can we give a round of applause for Chris for being the butt of all my jokes today? There you go. I hope you like it. All right. So as we think about creatives, and as we think about people who are incredibly good at coming up with ideas and are incredibly good at improving their ideas and their skills, and talking about people who are really good at improving over time through being really reactive to constructive criticism, aren't we talking about people who we want to do well on a regular, who want to do well in tech? Don't we want product managers who are continually doing all of these different types of things? Don't we want engineers who are always doing these types of things? Don't we want that? And so These are skills that are in high demand and are also perfectly suited to startup and tech life. And yet, this population of people in particular are typically completely dismissed when they're trying to transition out of the arts and into technology. So now, Carolyn, you might tell me, that's great and all that you managed to make this transition from the arts into tech, right? And it's cool that creatives are unique and have all these cool skills, but you may say, I need someone who already knows what they're doing and has known exactly what they were going to do with their entire life since they were in middle school, right? Why should I care? Well, you should care because we're at the beginning of a massive revolution of work. And no, I'm not talking about quiet quitting. I am the worst at quiet quitting. I am far too loud for such a concept. But the world is about to change in a massive way. How? Automation and AI technology are going to make millions of jobs around the world irrelevant. Now, this is something that most people don't want to talk about, right? The only person I can think of who talks about this on the regular is Andrew Yang. And it's okay, like I know, as a former New Yorker, I'm allowed to say nobody likes Andrew Yang anymore. There's a reason he's not the mayor of New York, but he does have one incredibly great point, which is that we are about to have a pretty massive change in how we work. And we do not have an educated workforce that is ready for it, right? So how big of an issue is this going to be? Well, in the art world, there's actually a whole conversation going on about AI-generated artwork. Can you raise your hand? Have you guys heard about this, about DALL-E 2 and things like that? All right, we got like half the room. Okay, so in the art world, there's this whole conversation going on about whether AI is going to replace artists. And the reason why is because of some really cool AI softwares. The most popular one is called DALL-E 2, which is by OpenAI. And what it does is basically you can write a prompt on this website, and it spins out completely original works of art based off of what you wrote. It's really cool stuff. So you can go in there and type "Bananas" by Van Gogh, and it'll give you a whole series of different pieces of art that look like what Van Gogh would do with some bananas. People are also searching for all sorts of different things, whether it's things by certain artists or, trying to have celebrities battle each other with lightsabers. It's a really fun tool, and the AI software is really fun to play with. So, as I mentioned earlier, I recently started a new startup, and I was accepted into Beta's Startup Accelerator. Beta is the organization that runs Twin Cities Startup Week. So, which is really exciting, but the thing is, the startup is called Home Surfing. I really don't have a lot of branding material yet. And I thought, wouldn't it be fun if I tried to get this AI software to make something for my brand? The brand is called Home Surfing. Wouldn't it be funny if I could get some artwork of houses surfing? So I called my engineer who works on my startup, and I asked him, hey, do you have an invite to DALL-E 2? Because it's still invite only at this point, or you have to wait on a wait list to get it. And he said, I haven't been using DALL-E 2, but I already have a software that I've been using that basically does the same thing. I've been playing with it for months, and I can use code to really make it really pretty spectacular. So we ended up playing with it. And at first, when we put in the prompts, we got some cool images of surfing. But the AI kind of forgot about the house part, right? So we played around with it some more. Now we got things that are a little bit more interesting. We've got these houses that are somehow in the water surrounded by some crazy tsunamis. which is pretty fun, and they're really spectacular and a little strange. Like, you'll find little things, like there's one of them where it looks like a bird or a surfer is like jumping out of the house. Like, so goofy, right? Well, then we asked it to make a logo with the same prompt as before, and it forgot all about the house, but it made some pretty wild stuff. I like the sunset that has a mustache. I think that one's particularly my vibe. We got this one where it looks like the house is kind of being swallowed by the moon, which was exciting. Look at this is a software, just prompted by text. And you know, these aren't collages or anything like that. This is when we tried to get it to use houseboats. We thought that might be helpful because it was getting confused, but we got this crazy rooftop thing going on. This one I thought was just really colorful and fabulous. Though if you look in all of these, you know, the houses don't really look like they're surfing. That one looks like it's floating, you know. And we got some spookier houses over here. And I mean, look at the detail of this. It's really quite fantastical and spectacular. We got some more over here. I'm holding it. Give me 1 second. So the question here is, and the question the art world is currently deliberating, is will AI replace artists? Are artists a species that are at risk? Well, I don't think so. And the reason I don't is because think about how many luxury brand items that are out there, things that are really extremely expensive, whether it's purses, clothing, rugs, or anything like that. I think people still really value and admire things that are made by people. And you know, these AI softwares are made by people. In order to make all of those images that I just showed you, the engineer spent like an hour or two fussing with the code to get it exactly right. To me, I think we're seeing an expansion of the arts, not shrinking. But at the same time, if we're worried about AI replacing artists, something that I don't really think has ever been a part of the conversation, there's a lot more that we probably need to be worried about when it comes to other jobs that are particularly repetitive, that are particularly organized by rules, or could, you know, easily be replaced by different computers. So, and you know, it's possible that the change is going to be gradual, and we're going to see it over time, and it's not going to be that big of a deal. People will adjust. But after seeing the pandemic and how quickly we were able to take up remote work, I mean, if we see this will it or won't it be a recession, right? That could put a lot of people out of work really quickly if companies really start moving forward on these types of technology. So how do we fix this? All right. Other than just universal basic income, of course, as Andrew Yang says. Well, we need more entrepreneurs to invent the future. Do they have to be fine artists? No. There are plenty of really creative entrepreneurs who've never touched a paintbrush in their life, and they should absolutely still be working in tech. But if we need highly creative inventors who are willing to take risks and experiment and learn from criticism, wouldn't it make sense to aggressively recruit from this demographic? And with no-code tools thriving and improving every year, and with educational tools and YouTube and whatnot, empowering more people to learn about more things, I think we should really be taking advantage of this. Because the reality is, you know, we still have a backlog of people who are unable to get into tech who probably could. And we're not considering them because they don't have that cherry-picked, very specific background. But right now, all around the world, there are millions, if not billions, of kids who have one of these in their pocket. And there are probably millions of kids, maybe hundreds of thousands, but probably millions of kids who are going to make their very first TikTok this year, who are playing with creative softwares every day. And that is really accessible. And that is really easy for them to get access to. So I think that, you know, we are going to see some massive, incredible changes in the next 10 years. And I think we're gonna be in the middle of an entrepreneurial and artistic renaissance in tech, which is amazing. But I also wanna make sure that our Fortune 500 companies and nonprofit organizations and startups and academic institutions are ready for this and are forward thinking about this. You know, I don't want more bye-bye situations. We should be looking for more best buy opportunities. And I think it's definitely possible if we continue to move forward and create more opportunities for those who are ready for it. Thank you. All right, we have 4 minutes. Does anybody have any questions? Do we have any online that we want to talk about? Here, I have to give you the mic if you... Nothing? No worries. Anybody here? Okay, we got to pass the mic to you. How quickly can we do that? I'll run up.
I was just hoping to hear a quick spiel about your startup.
Oh, thank you. I would love some free publicity and promotion for my startup. I do not know her. This is not a plant, I promise. So Home Surfing is a real estate platform that's kind of designed like a Tinder or a Hinge. So users are able to swipe through listings, like the homes they like, leave comments on them, and then at the end of each day, week, month, whatever, we have curated lists of all of the top homes in every single neighborhood and every single price range all across the country. So we're still under construction. We'll be launching later this November. If anybody wants to come to the beta showcase on Wednesday night, I'll be there. Please vote for me, it'd be great. And yeah, our goal is really to help existing realtors who are trying to sell hard to sell homes, and also to help newer, younger realtors or realtors who have moved build a larger network and potentially connect with users who have very similar design sensibilities. So, yeah. Any other questions? All right, I'm gonna, oh, you're handing? Beautiful, okay.
Hi, thank you for a very inspirational speech. I actually do have a background in music, and I'm also going into tech, so this was just perfect. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Oh, thank you. Oh, that's so sweet. Oh my gosh, anyone else? We got 2 minutes. Oh.
Awesome. Carolyn, thank you so much for the talk today. The problems that you're describing with connecting creatives to the work opportunities and connecting the employers who need them to the creatives are not something that are really simple to solve. But the ATS systems you describe have been used to kind of screen out applicants in a world, in theory, where companies get a lot of applicants for a single role. How do we turn that around now that we're in an unemployment situation of about 2% in Minnesota? How do we create those matchmaking opportunities? Is it in-person events? How do we bypass ATS to make sure that the people who need and want these opportunities are connected to the companies who desperately need them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of different ways to do it. I think one of the things that we can do, I mean, ATS technologies are very easy to adjust. You know, it's all about what keywords are you looking for. So at the very minimum, being able to go into those and say, oh, can we change this or this or this? Putting in, you know, filmmaking backgrounds, putting in different types of creative backgrounds is a very easy first step. But I think it's even more than that, right? I think that, you know, recruiters should be considering people who go to art schools. You know, if you're looking for really young people who could be easily trained, especially if you have any educational opportunities there, I think there's a lot of opportunities to like approach film schools to find product managers, product and managers, and like filmmaking in particular, if somebody's like a director, producer type, really strong overlap there. Plus, you know, UX designers, somebody might be an incredible designer, but doesn't know how to make a website, but that doesn't take that long to learn. So I think direct outreach, definitely. And when it comes to artists, my rule of thought is simply to reach out to as many people who you think are interesting as possible and avoid applying for jobs with ATS systems altogether. That's my general rule. Now, you had a question. We only have a few seconds, though. Do we gotta go? One more? Okay. Do you still have your question?
Could you explain, when you talk about future tech giants, what areas might be the trends where there might be that growth?
Like industry-wide, or?
Yeah, to be a tech giant, what fields?
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, when it comes to fields, I think there's a lot, so when it comes to an individual job situation, I think there's some easy overlap things, right? An artist could probably easily become a UX designer, a filmmaker could probably easily become a product manager. But when we're talking industries, the opportunities are pretty endless, and it really has to do with, you know, what that individual's background is like, right? So for me, my mom and my stepmom are both realtors, and so I approached tech and building my startup in the real estate space. And so my argument when it comes to creatives being the next future tech giants, it's gonna be so much easier to build apps. It's gonna be so much easier to build websites and just any type of technology in the next 10 years. Already, no-code tools are really impressive. And really incredible. So I think we're gonna see things in a lot of different sectors. There might be some that are more advanced than others. The creator economy, we're probably gonna see really boom, I think. And with that, I think we gotta get off the stage. So thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate you coming out, and hope you have a wonderful time at Twin Cities Startup Week.
Yeah.